Okay. Hello and welcome to the Parsha class. This is Parsha Shemini 5785. I'm Rabbi Eddie Rosenberg, and we're here to study this beautiful Parsha. It's very short, but has a lot of very fundamental Jewish ideas here, and I hope we can find some beautiful lessons from the rabbis of the past who've written on this subject in their Parshanut, and we'll take it from there. The parsha begins. It's a quick summary of the parsha. It's actually an easy parsha to summarize. The parsha begins with the last of the 8 days of the Miluyim, the 7 days of Miluyim, the preparation for the use of the Mishkan, and we're on the 8th day. In other words, we're on the day after that when we can now start using the Mishkan, and for the first time, the Mishkan is used properly. The Shekhinah comes down. The Jewish people all see it. In other words, they see some sort of presence of Hashem in our midst. And Nadav and Avihu, two sons of Aaron, make a mistake of some sort. We've talked about this in previous years, what exactly their mistake was, how they could make the mistake, why they made the mistake, and they summarily die. And the rest of the parsha continues with some rules for the Kohanim, and then rules for everybody regarding foods that we eat. And we focused in previous years quite a bit on the last part of the parsha with different rules for some of the foods, and we'll mention some of them today as well, I'm sure. But that's not going to be our focus today. I think we'll try to focus as much as possible on the first half of the parsha, and we'll more or less take it from there. Okay, let's try to get all my books here in order. All right. All right, so let's go and look at the source sheet provided, and there we go. Thank God. All right, very beginning of the parsha, first verse says, "Vayhi b'yom hashmini," and it was on the seventh day. Kara Moshe la'Aaron ulevanav uleziknei Yisrael, and Moshe called for Aaron and his sons, and for the elders of Israel. So it makes a lot of sense since, as we just mentioned, this whole episode is going to be where Aaron and his sons are using the Mishkan for the first time. So it makes a lot of sense for Moshe to gather them and give them, instructions. Very often you'll see in the business world, in the corporate world, and in offices, in the medical world, everywhere, wherever there's a group of people who work, they usually meet at some point, sometime in the beginning of in the beginning of the day, if something important is happening that day that they should be aware of. That's normal. And so here Moshe is gathering together Aaron and his sons to tell them what they're about to do, and that's fine. Question is, why Uzikne Yisrael? Why is he calling in the elders of Israel? Why is he calling in the older people? What do they have to do with it? These ostensibly are people of leadership status. They're not just the old folks who are standing around playing checkers and chess. These are the elders who are advising, giving of their wisdom, right? So why do they need to be there? We're not the first to ask this question, and it's okay to ask questions. That's how we learn. The Rashi from the 10, 1100s from France. So Rashi, famous, probably he's called the father of all commentaries. So Rashi says, he brings from the Midrash, why did he call the elders? Lahashmi'am she'al pi hadibur Aaron nichnas u'mishamesh b'kahuna gedola v'lo yomru me'elav nichnas. He wanted the elders to be there for the very simple reason that in case there's any doubt later on about who sent Aaron, who gave Aaron all of this authority, nobody should say that it came from Moshe. It has to be clear from the get-go that this authority is vested on Aaron by Hashem. Hashmim al pi dibur, through Hashem's saying, through Hashem's word, did Aaron get this job, and not through some other random. Nobody got bribed here. Nobody's playing favorites. It's not like Moshe's trying to find a job for his poor brother. This was all done through Hashem. So that's why he would call the elders. But even this Rashi needs commentary because, as we'll see in a moment, the elders weren't the ones who might bring up this kind of issue. It would seem that others in the Jewish people might be doubtful, but the elders should probably be very clear about this. After all, they should have a lot of respect for Moshe. So what's happening, and why are we bringing in these elders? Good question. So this is a question on a question, and we're going to have an answer from Rabbi Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer, who was the last Rav of Krakow, and so he says like this. Right. So he says, Perish Rashi quotes this Rashi, as we just did. Dibor Aron Nichnas Mishamish Kahuna Gadol V'lo Amru Me'alav Hu Nichnas Ad Kan Lashon. So all of that's a quote from Rashi, just as we said that again. Moshe was sending in the elders for them to see and hear that it was not his own choice that Aaron be the Kohen Gadol, that his sons be the Kohanim. It was Hashem. Digdakti im matiri haya Moshe shelo yikru b'nei Yisrael tager al gedulat Aaron. If you look carefully, it is possible still that the Jewish people would question the greatness of Aaron. By the way, as we will see later on in the Torah, in Parshat Korach, hayat tzarech le'asof et ha'am ptuchim sheb'Yisrael. So why would he bring these elders? Hello, ziknei ha'am harshaim v'talmidei chachamim heim belav hachi yedia ki raya Aaron le'oto itzlata. These elders, these are wise people. They shouldn't have any reason to question Aaron. Ube'emet leMoshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom amar Hashem yitbarach hinei anochi ba alecha be'et ha'anan leman yishma ha'am b'divrei amcha. It's always the it's always the nation that we should be worried about in their questions and such. It's never been, even when Moshe got the Torah, that it had to be done in front of the nation because the nation might question. The elders don't question these things, so why are they being brought here? Amnam Kain, who ki Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom haya amud haTorah na'alev v'niskav. When it comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, it was very clear. Everybody knew for sure that Moshe Rabbeinu was an upstanding person, that he deserved whatever he got. That if Hashem was going to choose any Jew to receive the Torah, it would be Moshe Rabbeinu. There was no question about that. He proved himself with his behavior, with his leadership, with his love of the Jewish people, etc. Ach haya kvad. Kaved Peh, Kaved Lashon, even though he had trouble speaking, Ve'ein lo davar im ha'am, and he didn't speak directly to the nation. Av ha'am lo hisig miktzat min ha'miktzat ha'gdolat Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom. And because he didn't speak to them directly, the nation could not fathom how great of a person he was. Rak ziknei Yisrael gedolei Torah heim hevinu ki gadol Moshe mikol ha'adam. These people, these elders, they had a better appreciation since they are the leaders. They had more of an appreciation. They were in the room where it happened. To quote a popular musical, right? They know how Moshe interacts and how Moshe thinks and what Moshe deserves, and because of that. V'zu kavanat hakatuv of Parshat Kitisa. That's what it says in Parshat Kitisa. V'yar Aharon v'chol b'nei Yisrael et Moshe, and that Aaron and all the children of Israel were they observed Moshe. Aaron of b'nei Yisrael gedolim shebe'emunah the greatest of the people. Hema raru v'yivinu v'hine karen or pnei Moshe. They saw this light that was emanating from Moshe's face, right? When Moshe spoke to the people, yeah, he covered his face out of humility or whatever. But when he spoke to these people, to these zakenim, to these elders, they had a much better idea of who he was. Right? Kiyeter karnaim gedol Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom al zulato. Amnam ha'am pliya had madrega lo hivinu gedulato le'emuna be'uma al kain min mihanachotz haya ki yigla olav Hashem be'amud anan leman yishma gam ha'am viru gam hema Meguli Gedolas Rabam. It's the nation that could not appreciate how great the people were. But that right there is exactly why, of all the people Moshe called to watch as he was investing Aaron and his sons with this new position, it needed to be the elders. The because the elders, what they could see was ulam nehafuch hu inyan etzel Aaron. It was the opposite with Aaron. Mahayta avodato ohev shalom v'rodev shalom v'kirv et chabriya l'Torah. What was Aaron's job? So Moshe had a distance from the people. He was more or less divided from them, not for any mean reasons, but just because he was on a higher level. Aaron, however, Aaron was a people's person. Yeah, he was a people's person, right? He was amongst the people. He was bringing peace between families. He tried to make peace between people, bring people closer to Torah. He showed love everyone he went. He was a man on the street. The man of the street, not and right, a man of the street. He wasn't holed up in the White House. He was more of a congressman, shaking hands, kissing babies type thing. And so because of that, it could be thought by these elders that his he wasn't so great. He's not as powerful as Moshe or something to that effect. And so what they needed to see, and this is why they're here. Hold on. What they needed to see was that Aaron's greatness comes from himself. That is his greatness. His love of people, that was his humble way of reaching people and doing Hashem's will. Not all not all not all service of God has to be high-handed, right? There's different kinds of service. There are you take for example different rabbis. Right? Some rabbis are like the Vilna Gaon, a great person, but he's not known for his outreach. He basically stayed in the confines of his study and learned all day long, and taught various numbers of students, but mostly kept to himself and didn't go out into the streets. Whereas somebody like at the same time, a contemporary of his, the Dubno Magid, so he was a man of the people. He would go from congregation to congregation, shul to shul, person to person sometimes, and tell stories and try to teach lessons and try to bring people up with ethics and the Torah way. But which one is better? Which one is holier? So we don't have to judge that. Both have a very important place, very important part in our avoda. We have really every Jew really has two parts of our service to Hashem. We have the the part that has to do with the our service directly with Hashem, and the other part that has to do with our with our relationship with other people. And we can't let one go in favor of the other. They're both equally important, and so that's what we see. Okay. And so that's why he had to bring the elders, and this all brings it all back, just to explain the verse. So when we said earlier that Moshe brought on the 8th day Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel, there's a very important reason for that. Rashi says it's to indicate to the elders that it was not from his own decision that Aaron has his new position. It's not Moshe inaugurating him. It's Hashem through Moshe. So that's Rashi's point. And the Rav Yosef Nehemiah Kornitz's point is that not only is that important to know whose authority it is, but it had to be the elders who saw it, because the elders might not be thinking of Aaron with the great esteem that they should, because he's a man of the people. He's a commoner. He's just out there shaking hands, bringing people to Shabbos table, feeding people, cholent, whatever he's doing. He's not really that great. He's not like Moshe. That needed to be nipped in the bud right there, because the elders needed to see that it was Aaron's greatness also that got him the position that he had. All right, very similar, different but similar concept is going to be learned elsewhere in the parsha as right now. Chapter 9, verse 6, so just a few verses later in the parsha, says, "Vayomer Moshe zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem ta'asu v'yireh aleichem kivod Hashem." So the Jewish people just finally fulfilled all the requirements. The Kohanim did all the requirements of these preparations for the Mishkan. Mishkan is built, it's inaugurated, it starts working, and the Moshe and Aaron go into the tent of meeting. They come out, and the Shekhinah is there, and the Jewish people all see it, and it's very obvious. And what does Moshe say? He says, "This is the thing that Hashem commanded that you do, and so that the presence of Hashem should appear to you." That's usually something that Moshe Rabbeinu would say before giving a command. Do this. What does do this mean when it's something that you've already done? This is, like I just said, this is the end of everything. There's no more preparation to make. Everything's prepared. Everything's done. Zeh hadavar, do this thing, and then you'll see Hashem's presence. What's he talking about? What could he? Is this out of order? What's happening? Torah can't be out of order. So writes the Netziv, one of the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin. He passed away about 100 years ago. Just to give you some historical context, right? So he writes in Emek Davar, very important, very relevant piece, still relevant today, as it was, especially relevant today, as relevant as it ever was. Zeh pasuk Omer Darshuni. This verse is screaming, "Explain me, explain me. I don't make sense. Please explain me." Sharei kvar asu ma'aseh alehem. They already did what they were asked to do. Ve'viu v'akol al pnei Ohel Moed u'malahem lasot od. They did everything they could do. What else could they do? Why would Hashem tell them to be making other things? What are there's no other instructions. What's happening? They did the work. Darshu Chazal b'Torat Kohanim, and he brings a midrash in Torat Kohanim. Amar lahem Moshe Yisrael ota yitzahara ba'aviro belibchem. This is and we've talked about this midrash before. We talked about it with the commentary of Rav Schwab in the past. I think some others, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry. That was important. I'm sorry. Moshe Rabbeinu says, according to the Midrash, here's the thing that you have to do. The Midrash says the thing you have to do is to watch your Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination. You always have to watch your evil inclination. So that's nice, but what does that have to do with anything? What is that? What is the evil inclination here? Tiu kulchem b'yira achad be'avoda achad sharet lifnei hamakom. They were all doing the one thing with the one intention, and they were standing in front of Hashem. Kishem shehu yechid be'olam kach tihei avodatchem miyuchedet lifanav shneimar maltem et ola levavchem lifnei ma ki ani Hashem elokechem hu elokeh elokim ve'adonai adonim ve'asitem ken yira alechem kavod Hashem. So okay. So the Midrash is saying again that what Moshe is talking about isn't just this past behavior of whatever they did. This thing that they need to do is to protect themselves, to serve Hashem with the proper intent, which is very nice. But again, what is it doing here? This midrash almost needs more explanation than the verse itself. What's the point of quoting the verse here that Hashem is our God? Inyan kvar haya b'mei Moshe kitot b'Yisrael shayu lehotim achar avat Hashem aval lo al yedei gvulim shehagivila Torah. There are people, even in Moshe's day, who ostensibly say they want to serve Hashem and be one and unified, and they love Hashem so much, but not the way the Torah says. I want to love Hashem my way. I want not Judaism, I want Eddieism. Right? Whatever your name is, ism. Right? You make up your own religion. So already in Moshe Rabbeinu's time, that existed. He's going to explain later on Parshas Korach about this as well. These people who gathered with Moshe with Korach, who took the Ketoret and the fire pan, and they wanted to become Kohanim. That's their thinking. The Torah says I'm not a Kohen. That's the Torah. I know I want to be close to Hashem, and Kohanim get close to Hashem by burning this Ketoret. I'll burn Ketoret too, and I'll be just like them. Making up their own ideas of what's holy, what's not holy, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and justifying it under the guise of religiosity. Right? There are people like that, even today, right? They love this holiness. They are not wrong to love this holiness. They're only wrong in how they then attain that holiness. Shehisig avat Hashem idei haktoret. They wanted to do it through the Ketoret over there, etc. V'nei kvar yada Moshe Rabbeinu shekito ke'elu min totzotot ela shelo higia adayin b'shah. They weren't acting yet, but Moshe Rabbeinu, wise man as he was, it's saying it lightly, knew that these groups, these kinds of people existed. He's probably seen some of these kinds of hypocrites in Mitzrayim also. By the way, worth saying, these kinds of people exist in every group. Right? They're very dedicated to holiness on their terms. uh, uh, Al Kain, Bevo Yom, Hatrotz, Gilu Shechina Shelazeh, this great day that the Shechina first rested on the Jewish people, right? The eighth day here that we're talking about. On that day, it was a great time to do something very important. Moshe Rabbeinu realized. Hayatachlit shukatam. That's the goal of their love. That's what they want. They want this closeness to Hashem. That's what Shechina means, right? This huge love of Hashem. Ela shehavin Moshe the mikol makom yesh belev kama nashim in the hearts of many people. Al mashe gile inyan al yedei parte ofane elu. There are a lot of people who feel this way. Masha feel efshar igia alav ela be'et shentu al zeh. So he found a place to warn the people about this. In other words, what's Moshe Rabbeinu saying? He's saying, you see this great, amazing Shechina event that's happening? Watch your Yetzer Hara. Watch your Yetzer Hara. What are you talking about? This Shechina event, this you coming closer to Hashem, shouldn't come from within you. That's the Yetzer Hara. It should come from outside of you. That's the Torah. The Torah tells you how to get close to Hashem. The Torah tells you what the mitzvot are. You don't make up your own. If you make up your own, you think you're getting holy, but you're doing the exact opposite. You're making up your own thing. Hashem, we followed all of the steps in making the Mishkan. These walls are this size. This column is this tall. The hooks are this many, made out of this material. Everything is by the book, literally. And that's why we have the Shekhinah. And that's why the Shekhinah is appearing to the Jewish people. Because we did everything we were told to do, not because these things are holy in and of themselves, but because we followed Hashem's command. There's a halacha, Shulchan Aruch, there's a halacha. It's relevant to all of us today. That when you do a mitzvah, ideally you should have kavanah. Some people say if you do the mitzvah without kavanah, you've done nothing. Right? You put up a mezuzah, you put on, you lit Shabbat candles. If you did them without thinking about what you're doing, perhaps you did nothing. Perhaps. What's the main kavanah you need to have? There's a lot of deep philosophical, mystical, Kabbalistic thoughts you can have, Shamor and Zachor, all kinds of things you could be thinking about. What's the main thing you need to think about when you're doing these mitzvot? That you're commanded to do them by Hashem. That's the halacha. That's the minimum kavanah you need to have. You're not doing this because I like to light beautiful candles on my table. That's not, if you're thinking that while you're doing it, you've done no mitzvah. If you're putting up a mezuzah because it's very decorative and you want to show off what a pretty Jewish home you have, that's not the right kavanah. The kavanah has to be, Hashem told me to do this, and I'm doing it. Hashem told me to jump through this hoop. I'm jumping through the hoop because Hashem, the king, the creator of the world, my master, told me to do it, and that's why I'm doing it. If you have that intent, that's the Yetzer Tov. That's the intent you need to have. If you have any other intentions, let's bring this out of the halacha and back to this pasuk. If you have any other intentions, then what ends up happening is, again, you're inventing your own. You're basically inventing your own religion, and that's a very dangerous thing. We've seen in the past all kinds of all kinds of mistakes that happen because of that. So that's the idea. Very important lesson from the Hamak Hadavar, again from the Netziv, and definitely worth our attention. Okay, next we're going to skip to the next chapter, chapter 10. Chapter 10 is where Nadav and Avihu are killed, and in a previous year, somebody asked in shul, somebody asked the question, and he felt bad about asking the question because, like, I don't know, are we even allowed to ask such questions? The Torah didn't bring it up, so yes, you're allowed to ask these questions. You know how I know? Because you asked. There's no question you're not allowed to ask. First of all. Second of all, we have, Baruch Hashem, we have 2,000 years. We have 2,000 years of Jewish literacy and commentary to have to have the to have these questions asked. I'm sorry, give me one moment. Oh boy, it's always something, isn't it? Oh, I could do it like that. I have an easy way to do something. Give me 1 second. Just save this some time. All right, here we go. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay. Okay, we are up to chapter 10, verse 2. Like I said, the death of Nadav and Avihu, v'teitze eish milifnei Hashem, and a fire came out from Hashem, v'tochal otam, and it ate them, v'yamutu lifnei Hashem, and they died in front of Hashem. So it's terrible death. Definitely miraculous, and definitely a miraculous death. But why is this happening? Why would this go on? So we could come up with several answers. Let's see. Yep. But the Dat Zakanim. So this is these are the Bali Tosfot. These are the grandsons of Rashi. That sort of period of time. So we're talking about like the 11 and 1200s or so in France. They bring up an interesting point from the Talmud. It says Plukta Ika Betorat Kohanim, actually from the Midrash, that where exactly they died. Where exactly did these particular where did Nadav and Avihu, those Aaron's sons, where did they die? Because if they died in the Ohel Moed, as we say, then we have an issue. And the issue is, as we've been learning about recently in Mishnah Yomi and in other places, there's this concept, and we'll learn about this very soon in the Torah itself, in Achrei Mot. We'll learn about this concept of Tumat Ohel. That's when there's a dead body inside of a room that's covered by a roof, as most rooms are, or a tent, right? So then that entire room, everything in that room gets the tuma, gets the, for lack of a better translation, gets the impurity of the of this death. And then if there's certain items, they have to be broken or they have to be tovel, taken to the mikveh. A person who goes into such a room would need to get sprinkled by the ashes of the red heifer. All right, so all kinds of stuff. But the question is, where are they? Where are Nadav and Avihu when they die? If it's the Ohel Moed, check this out. They've just made the Beit Hamikdash, the Mishkan at this point. They've made the Mishkan Tameh. Chas v'shalom. So why are we not worried about that? So that's Zakanim brings up the point that there's an opinion that that's where they died, right? That they died in the Ohel Moed, Some people say and they bring another opinion. It's an argument. Some say they died outside. And why would we see, by the way, later on that their cousins go in to pull them out. So how are they able to go in? And now they should be tameh. They should be impure. So that's really the discussion of the Dad Zakanim. Says Rav Chaim Kanievsky in Tama Dekra. He brings up this question that somebody asked in shul, just in passing, and was a little bit nervous about asking. And I said, "Don't worry, other great people asked this question." So Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who passed away not so long ago, one of the greats of our Torah world, he says, "Ayin b'dat zekanim." So Ohel Moed, no. Right, so he quotes this Dat Zakanim with this argument where Nadav and Avihu died, and it says Nadav and Avihu that mitu lefnei lama lo nitma kol hamishkan tumat ha'olim. Why doesn't the whole Mishkan become tameh like that? Become impure? Kol kli hamishkan hayu tzrichim tevila, and then all of the vessels of the Mishkan would need to go to the mikvah. Lo matzina, we don't find it. It doesn't say, hey, stop everything, stop the presses. We got to go and tovel everything in the mikvah. No, they don't do that. V'yesh lomar la'adayin lo nemar lahem pasha tumat ohelim. But the fact is, they weren't told yet about this mitzvah of tumat ohelim. That mitzvah that I just told you about. That's in the Mishnah. That's going to be later on. As I said, it's in a later parsha where we learn about this tuma of ohelim. Afal gav shebe'eit matan Torah kvar yaduo kol hamitzvot. Even though when the Torah was given at Har Sinai, at that point they knew all of the Torah. He has a very interesting idea here. Even though that's true, ma kamash katav Rashi b'Shemot, etc. Mikol makom kol zeh shelo nitztavu al zeh lo haya mitame ayin horiot, etc. lefnei hadibur tzarich. So the until Hashem actually commands the Jewish people with the mitzvah as a whole, the mitzvah doesn't kick in. Now that's a fascinating idea. It fits in very nicely with what we just said, because tuma and tahara, and we've said this before in the words of Rav Schwab in the previous class. Tuma and tahara are not inventions, but they don't kick in until Hashem says they do. They're not a logical thing; they're a spiritual thing, and they get their string gets pulled, and they go into action when Hashem says so. And the Hashem has not said so about this yet. There's no tumat ohelim, even though the mitzvah is given. The mitzvah is given with all the other 612 mitzvot that were given at Har Sinai. So yeah, they got the mitzvah, but they're not responsible for it until they are literally commanded to do it. And they're not literally commanded to do it until later on. Therefore, at this point, it doesn't happen. So like, oh, I didn't know about this mitzvah. I wasn't commanded to do this mitzvah. Now I have to go and do the mitzvah? No, that's not how that works. Especially when it comes to things like tuma and tahara. Not only if you could not have, not only did you not know, it didn't activate. It didn't happen. Tuma and tahara in this situation wasn't even a thing until it was. And when was it? Later on in the parsha. Later on in the Torah. So that's what you have. All right. So that's that. And that's, I think, a beautiful thought, and very comforting, in fact, I think. It's something we really need to think about sometimes, is that we don't need to get ahead of ourselves. You know, there's a Baruch Hashem, there's a lot of mitzvot. There's a lot to do. Hashem will keep us busy. We'll never get bored, that's for sure. We shouldn't have to overthink ourselves. Oh, well, what about this? What about that? Hold on, calm down. don't be nervous. Hashem has a plan, and part of his plan includes you not going overboard when you're in doing a mitzvah you're not commanded to do yet. Okay, everything in its time. Okay, chapter 10, verse 4. A whole 2 verses later. Vikra Moshe el Mishal ve'el Eltzafan, like as I said, Moshe commanded their cousins, Nadav and Avihu's cousins, Mishal and Eltzafan, Bnei Uziel Dod Aaron, these guys are the sons of Uziel, who was the Dod Aaron, the uncle of Aaron. So Aaron's uncle's sons. So these are, I guess they would be his. They're not. Well, they're not. I don't know how you call it in English. But they're not their cousins, not the first cousins. They're like second cousins once removed or something. I'm not sure how that. I'm not sure. That's what happens when you're not American by birth. You don't know all these weird designations. Where I come from, cousin is cousin. It doesn't matter how distantly related they are. Okay. Anyway, Dod Aaron v'yomer alehem, and he said to them, Kirvu su'u et achechem me'et pnei hakodesh el michutz l'machaneh. He said, come and take them out, pull them out um, from the Kodesh to the outside of the tent, outside of the camp. So at least when they're dead, by the way, this is part of the rest of the argument of the Dat Zakenim that we didn't quote, that we had. You can look it up in the source sheet, but certainly that over there, they were, their bodies were definitely in the at this point at the Ohel, which not in the Ohel, sorry, in the Azara, in the courtyard. So either they died there and they ran out into the Azara, or they died in the Azara. Are the different opinions about where some of the opinions about where they were. Either way, Rashi points out that the verse mentions Dod Aaron, Uziel Achi Amram Haya, Shenamar Uvnei Kahat, etc. So earlier in Shemot it mentions Uziel as one of Amram's brothers. Amram, who is the father of Moshe and Aaron, right? So that's it. Writes Rabbeinu Bachai. Rabbeinu Bachai was a student of the Ramban, so we're talking about the 1200s or so in Spain. Pirush Rashi Zal, Uziel Achi Amram, he quotes Rashi as saying that this Uziel is the uncle of Aaron because he's the brother of Amram. And he quotes the verse from Shemot as Rashi did, more or less. And good. Sorry. Uma ba harav zikron levracha lamdeinu. What is Rashi teaching us? Rashi is not usually interested in giving us, family history. The Moshe Rabbeinu's family tree. That's not something that Rashi is usually interested in doing. He's explaining. He comes. Rashi asks questions when questions need to be asked. What's the problem here? There's even a series of books called "What's Bothering Rashi." Right? The way of learning Rashi is to see what's the issue that he's bringing up. What's the issue here? It says Rabbeinu Bachai. You know what the issue is? So it says, Ki lo hainu yodim she'uziel achi Amram haya ele tzarech pirush leperusha. You need to explain to us who Uziel is. Ki lekach hiskir sorry. Right. So okay. So Hiskir Dod Aaron levar shayu Uziel ve'Aaron domim ma'asehem zelazeh. The point of saying that Uziel is Aaron's uncle is to tell you an important thing about Uziel. Uziel is not just related to him biologically, he's also related to Aaron ethically. The same characteristics that we saw in Aaron, we talked about this earlier today about how he was an Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom. He looked for peace. He tried to make peace between people. That characteristic also existed in his genes, right? It existed in his uncle Uziel. So, right? So, ki lekach iskir do Aaron levar shayu Uziel ve'Aaron domim b'maasehem zelazeh. They're similar to each other in their actions and their behavior. Hakish Uziel Aaron ma Aaron ohev shalom v'rodev shalom. Kach Uziel haya ohev shalom v'rodev shalom. Uziel, this father of these two cousins that are now taking out the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, there's a reason why they were chosen for this position. It's because their father is like Aaron in the same way that and they're also descendants of their father. They also have that characteristic. Very often, by the way, this is an aside here, just personally, anecdotally. I have no evidence of this. I have no way to prove it at all. But very, very often, from my experience, okay, most people can be nice. Let's start with that. I think most people are good, like the country song says. But aside from that, also, Kohanim have a tendency to be very, very loving people, very warm, very loving people. Certain things they are very passionate about. All right, let's give them that. The Talmud talks about that as well, especially when it comes to Yichus and their genealogy. Okay, I understand that. But almost every Kohen I know has the warmest, loving handshake and care for others. And one of the halachot, many people may or may not know this. When the Kohanim get up to bless the congregation and Ashkenazi communities on the Yomim Tovim and the holidays, they're not allowed to go up there if they have a beef with anybody in the shul. They can't bless the congregation if somebody in the congregation is going to be excluded from this blessing. So just an amazing thing to think about, that if there's a Kohen who's going up there and blessing the congregation, that's somebody who has no enemies here. It's a beautiful thing. Nobody here is going to badmouth this person. It's such a beautiful idea. Anyway, like I said, that's an aside. I apologize. Let's get back to Parshanut. I mean, it's not totally irrelevant, I think, because that's kind of what we're saying. These names are being chosen. These relationships are being expounded upon for a reason. There's something that we're trying to learn here. Okay, let's get to the kosher, non-kosher animals. We have quite a bit to say and a very short time to say it. We might have to go a little bit over time. I apologize ahead of time. There's two very important things we need to see, God willing, today. Okay, let's look at one of the animals that's called not kosher, and this is chapter 11, verse 6, Yud Aleph Vav. It says, "Vet arnavet ki malat gerahi ufarsa lo prisa tmea hi lachem." One of the animals that's mentioned by name as not being kosher is the arnavet, usually translated as a rabbit or a hare, as you see in Safari's translation. And even though it chews its cud, it has no hooves. You've probably seen a rabbit's foot. It is not hooved. It looks like a paw. And it is not a kosher animal. To be a kosher animal, it needs to chew its cud and have split hooves. And that's why the Torah mentions some animals specifically, tells us Rashi, because some of these animals have one sign or the other, or it seems like they have both signs. They need to have both, 100%. And they need to chew their cuds and have split hooves. So bovines, deer, those are some of the animals that are kosher. Okay, but Interestingly enough, the arnavet is being mentioned as an animal that chews its cud, which is very hard to say biologically because, as far as we know, rabbits do not have multiple stomachs to be able to do that. So there are other different opinions about what the arnavet is. However, on a completely different note, but related to this verse, is that the Torah, and we sort of commemorate this day on the 10th of Tevet every year. But there was a day when King Ptolemy, who was Egyptian Roman king, King Ptolemy, who started the famous library of Alexandria. So he wanted the Torah to be translated, and he basically kidnapped 50 rabbis. That's how 70 rabbis, 50, 70 rabbis, and put them into separate rooms. That's where the word Septuagint comes from, and forced them to translate the Bible, the Torah, into Greek. And so they were very concerned because, first of all, the Torah is too high, too holy to translate into any language perfectly. There's going to be all kinds of different translations. That's why, by the way, we just saw with the word arnavet. Right? You're going to translate it as rabbit. Well, there's other opinions. It's not always rabbit. Some people say it's this. Some people say it's that. Right? So it's not. Not a single verse really in the Torah that lends itself to a perfect translation into any other language. So they were concerned. And miraculously, even though they're in 70 separate rooms where they could not communicate with each other, they were able to somehow, miraculously, says the Gemara, give the same exact translation, each of them word for word, even with several changes that they all made. They made several changes, some for political reasons, some to avoid confusion. The most famous one is that the Torah begins with Bereshit bara Elokim. So it sounds like, which translates as, again, this is a bad translation, but simple translation, in the beginning, God created. Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, created, Elokim, Hashem. So Hashem created in the beginning. Problem with that is, if you translate it directly, it sounds like Bereshit created Hashem. There's, God forbid, something before Hashem. Nothing possibly could exist before Hashem because Hashem does not exist in time. He exists outside of time. He always was, always is, always will be. Hu haya, hu hovev, hu yeh. He's constant. So there was nothing before Hashem. So there couldn't be any creature named Bereshit that created Hashem. So they changed the order of that verse for the purpose of the Septuagint and translated it as Elokim bara Bereshit, that Hashem created in the beginning. All right. Those sorts of changes. There's some changes they made according to the Talmud, the Gemara, in Megillah 9a and b. Several changes were made for more practical political reasons, including this one. It says about the arnavet, right? They wrote there, instead of the rabbit, they said et hatsuira haraglayim. They wrote the short-legged animal instead of writing bunny, which, by the way, has long legs. Right? Anyway, whatever. V'lo katvu lo et harnevet. They didn't write arnavet. Why? Mipnei she'ishto shel Talmai arnevet shema. The wife of Talmai, her name, I don't know if he had many wives, I don't know his life, I don't care. The point is, he had a wife by the name of Arnevet, and they didn't want for the Torah to say that an arnavet is not kosher. That would incense the king, and he might go and kill all the Jews for such an insult to his wife, or to his choice of wife, more specifically. So that's why they did that. All right. And Rashi there says, "B'makom vet arnevet vet tzira raglaim lefi shedayak kitzrut uktanot meragleha." So Rashi there says, um, that the arnavet has short legs in the front. So that's the short legs, and much longer long legs in the back, right? That does represent the bunny. Okay, so that's what Rashi says. This is Rashi's commentary in the Talmud. Not often brought up here in the Parsha class, but here you go. Says the Ben Ish Chai, Rav Yosef Chaim of Bavel. So and he was writing again about 150 years ago or so, right? So his commentary on the Talmud is indispensable. I don't care if you're Ashkenazi or Sephardi. When you get to the parts of the Torah, the Talmud that has agarita and has parts that need to be explained, that he's the person, he's the go-to. So he quotes Rashi, etc., and then he asks a question: Kasha lefi zeh hava le katuv tzira hayadayim. So why not, if Rashi's right, um, if Rashi's right, why? Hold on, is it? Um, this is this is a long piece, but let's get to the main part here. So, so he asked the question, um, if uh, if that's the case, shouldn't they have written the one with the short hands? Why'd they say right? So they call it the short-legged animal, right? So why not say the one with short hands altogether? Why short legs? It's a little bit weird. The front legs, right? Why not say short hands? So he answers that this is the Ben Ish Chai, that what Rashi's pointing out here is that calling her anything else, making her sound like she's making this sound like like a person at all, that a person has hands and legs, right? An animal has just legs, front legs and back legs, but legs nevertheless. If you're trying to humanize it in any way by saying that it's a short-legged, short-handed animal or whatever, then what might happen is that the Ptolemy might still take that as a reference to his wife and would still be upset. So that's why, again, the sages very wisely avoided this potential pogrom, which is what it would have become, by not doing that, by not focusing on by not calling the front legs hands, which again might have implied again that the sages were making fun of this man's wife. All right, last piece. We were going to say this last year, but we ran out of time, and now we've run out of time. We're over our usual amount, but if we go a little bit further, I promise you'll learn something very insightful from the words of a current gadol, from Rav Moshe Sternbach. So in Talmud Dekra, let's bring up the verse first. The last verses of the Torah tell us that there's a command upon every single Jew to know the difference between what's kosher, what's not kosher, what's tameh, what's tahor, what's pure, what's impure. We have to know these things, and we mention these things in Havdalah every Saturday night. So chapter 11, verse 47 says, "Lahavdil bein hatama uvein hatahor." You should know the difference between what's impure and what's pure. Bein hachaya and echelet, bein hachaya shelo teachel. Between an animal that you can eat and an animal that you cannot eat. Says Rashi there. We're back to Rashi. We always have to talk to Rashi, right? Father of all commentators for a reason. It says bein hatama uvein hatahor. Tzarech lomar bein chamor lefara. You need to know the difference between a donkey and a cow. Below koam farshim heim. Wasn't this already explained? El bein atame lecha Torah lecha bein nishchat chatzur shel kana nishchat rubo. Besides knowing what animal meat is in front of you, you should be able to be expert enough to distinguish between whether it was shechted, whether it was slaughtered properly or not. Right? You have to know like the basics. Can you eat this? Can you not eat this? Etc. Says Tam Vedat. Says Rav Moshe Sternbach. Quotes this Rashi. Okay. Yeah. And he says, Nira devaora biyachdut should be yehadut yashanim dvarim hatluyim bishara. Kamo bein chitzu lemashichu yoter. The difference between this kind of slaughter, good slaughter or bad slaughter, is a mashahu, is a hair's breadth. It's a nothing. It's a tiny bit, and sometimes a tiny bit is very important. It's not up to us. Again, back to that topic we spoke about from the Netziv. It's not up to us to decide what's important, what's not. The Torah says this little detail is important. It is. V'hem mitzuyim lo rak behilchot shchita. We're talking about the laws of shchita here. B'kol derech haTorah efshar b'mashahu lahachshir u'lekadosh. Sometimes in all areas of Torah life, the little tiny hair's breadth can tell you the difference between holy and unholy, between what you can and can't do, between what's good and what's bad. Ve'esh b'shemashahu pogbim v'horsim hakol. That little bit might make the difference of a lot. One small step for a shochet, one giant leap for Judaism, to borrow a phrase. Tzarech lehazir shelo lischot kimloa v'neima mitzuv torah kedusha shema navu lidei mishko mikshol. Right, that you could say we could also be talking about just like the Netziv was saying earlier about these people who want to be very, very high spiritually, very close to H-Shem, and sometimes doing the worst possible thing. The same can apply to these kinds of people. There's he quotes an incident, a speech really that was heard by Hagon Rabbi Chaim Brisk, Rav Chaim Brisk, right? Shabal Yiraso Rav Lidrosh Divrei Torah Musar. The rabbi was giving teaching Torah and teaching Musar. And then the Rav Chaim said to him, Amar Alav L'Shad Dvarav Mishba Halo Lifnei Hagra Zechet Tzarech Livracha She Sabir Lo sorry, can't you read this? V'yuchiach Lifnei Shadarash O Pam Neged HaTorah. So Rav Chaim would not let him speak because he saw from his behavior that he wasn't the kind of person who should be teaching Torah and Musar in public. And when this rabbi challenged Rav Chaim, proved that what he said was that everything he said was according to the Torah. He said Rav Chaim said to him, he said, "Hishivu afilu basar kosher shenizbashel besir treif naser ba'achila." Even kosher meat can become not kosher if it's cooked in a non-kosher pot. You're a non-kosher pot. The way you behave, the way you do things, right? The things you do in private, that you're a non-kosher pot to begin with. So even kosher things that you're saying become not kosher coming out of your mouth. Just like a kosher meat cooked on a not kosher utensil becomes not kosher, so too your words. Shagam halo chashiv bo klal. And it's our job. Because it's also the Tzafnat Paneach, the Rogachover, who explains this pasuk in a kind of Shil Havdalah Mashahu Poso, that sometimes this little tiny bit, this little hair's breadth, can make the difference between a ruling of a Talmid Chacham, right? You have the knives that are used for slaughter, they have to be checked between each animal for nicks. If there's a single nick, it's not a kosher slaughtering knife, and there's the way to check with the fingernail, whatever, right? There's we're very careful, and we want to make sure that these things are correct. That people are eating kosher meat, we have to be very careful. Even a tiny nick can make a whole thing not kosher, and that's really the theme here that we're seeing over and over again in the parsha about how careful we have to be about every detail, at least the details that Hashem tells us to care about. Other things are made up, and you don't have to listen to those. If it's something in the Torah that you have to listen to, you have to listen to it in the greatest possible detail. And when we do, then indeed we should be blessed to see the Shekhinah and see real closeness between us and Hashem and all the Jewish people. Thank you. I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook, and if you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask.